Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for October 11th, 2024. I'm Benji Fisher moderating. Simo Helston is sharing their screen, and also present are Aaron McHale, Randy Ost, and Ralph Kohler. Simo, we now see your Slack window. And I guess we were planning to look at 3478869. Allow all or overview links to parent links. And this is a question for the navigation module, and that's actually something that's come up in my day job recently. But I think you actually wanted to talk about this in terms of policy, right?
Yes.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So this is something I'll try and see if my Slack window shows up again. Do you see my Slack now?
No.
Okay, that's good. So actually yeah. So this is from October 5th, 2024. This issue, the issue number is 3478869, and it's about adding all or overview links to parent links in navigation toolbar. And this is something that has come up, like it's mentioned in also in issue 343912, which is usability review and feedback from testing of navigation module when it was tested. And I think Aaron maybe knows about this one as well, and Ralph has commented. And here it also comes up that the what's that called, drawer, so the main like the main page that has opens to show the links under it is not clickable. And this one was from April this year, yeah, and the last comment was in July. And then I'm trying to find the issue on Slack.
Is it the comment from the 3rd of October by Michael Lande?
Yes, that's the one.
One second, I copy the link to the chat.
Thanks. And Simo, I posted a link to a test site you can use to illustrate the problem.
Yes. So here, the last two comments in that Slack thread are by Christina Chumias, and where she explains that this has been discussed before. And this is something that from another point of view has come up also in in the UX discussions.
Ralph, go ahead.
Just one brief addition. In the usability review comment or the issue itself, back then in our discussions, we've stated that mixing those patterns of basically you hover over the top level items while you have to click the submenu items here, and that mixed pattern is also one of the reasons why you need sort of a additional link here. And it also has to be added that if you, for example, hover over structure, and then structure is clickable while the others are not, and therefore it's so many mixed patterns. So yeah.
So display modes is not.
Yeah, exactly.
So this and this apparently was so that it was tested that people don't get the difference between opening and clicking the link open. So that was kind of some sort of trade-off that was decided on. And and it's also that it's all about more like it's about this kind of pages that are lists of links with some description. And this page, display modes, is not clickable directly from the navigation menu. And if it was, then it would show this form modes, view modes. And my issue here is that if it's one thing that if something is not good, then we change it. But if something was quite recently decided that it should go like this, then and it keeps getting a lot of issues that are posted or comments that I don't like this, but in the use tests, but the decision was based on users tests. So this kind of conflicts that some people think that it was confusing if it depends on where you click, what happens, and other people think that it should be clickable. And also the possibility to add here something extra that would kind of add stuff to the menu. So that's kind of a conflicting issues that have been decided on like this year. How to deal with that kind of issues. Like this one was that, oh, not that this one. Like this issue that was opened this month.
Okay, hang on a minute. Randy, what?
Yeah, one thing I want to mention is that the pattern of having a link and a button next to it to expand to show a list is a pattern that exists within Drupal sites right now. Like for instance, if you go into, I'm trying to remember, but like various like display modes or like in the views palette, there'll be like, you know, kind of like a drop down and you'll be able to click on like a button next to the options. And that's a pattern that exists within Drupal. And we're like, so I think that I don't know the user if the user testing proved that that was like difficult. Maybe it's in the visual presentation because it doesn't seem to be confusing elsewhere when that's being done in the Drupal interface.
So I think what you're talking about are drop buttons, right?
I don't know the right term for it, but that sounds correct. Like right there, operations, where it says edit. We've got what is obviously like a button to do edit, and then another button that will create a drop down. And so this pattern, like I said, exists here, and maybe it just needs to be better presented in the navigation to make it, you know, a better user experience.
Right. Oh, yeah, we are talking about the same thing. And And okay, so I just want to step back for a moment. And so the suggestion is on the issue that Simo's looking at now, the suggestion is that when you expand display modes, you get a standard link, perhaps overview, that would go to the display modes page rather than or in addition to being able to go to either of the child pages and then use the breadcrumbs to land on display modes. So that's the suggestion. And I think Simo doesn't want to so much rediscuss that decision. The point is that this is an idea that was discussed and rejected. Is that right, Simo?
Yeah, to my understanding, it was decided not to do this.
So it's a suggestion. It has some merit. But we reached a decision as a community and decided not to take that suggestion, to use some other solution. And the problem is that Simo wants to discuss is what to do when that suggestion keeps coming up. So Ralph, thanks for being patient.
I just wanted to add on Randy's point. I think there's the problem in the menu because all usually are links, and then you get a conflict with the success criteria 1.4.1 use of color, because that way on the content page in operations, for example, you have two buttons, and there it's clear that you get a modal opened as well as the context, but in the context of that navigation, the first link would be an actual link forwarding to another page, and therefore it should be basically not rely onto color. It should be technically illustrated as a actual link, and therefore it's the same problem with the top level one. It's not directly clear to the user that it's a link you could to another page there.
And Thomas Howell has just joined us. And Thomas, we're discussing the sort of general problem of what to do when a design decision is made to do one thing and people keep suggesting to do something else. And we're talking about it in the specific context of something in the navigation module. Aaron?
Thanks. So yeah, I have a comment on this specific issue, then the more broader issue of what to do in these cases. So what I suspect is happening here is this is an example where, because people got so used to the way that the admin UI, admin toolbar and Gin toolbar approach this, and because the navigation looks sort of similar to Gin toolbar, I think a lot of people probably their first reaction was to this is like, oh, this overview link, because the Gin toolbar and admin toolbar combination of modules does have this behavior. And so the reason this might probably come up and it'll continue to come up is because of, people are switching from, Gin and admin toolbar to navigation are possibly a bit, or feel like they're missing this overview link. Having said that, I support the decision to not have the overview link. I don't think there's any meaningful reason you would go to those overview pages. It would take you longer to complete the tasks that you're trying to do if you went through these overview pages. And it would be, a lot more links that would be added in. There's, accessibility considerations about if you're using a screen reader and you constantly have to keep tabbing past these overview links, that negatively impacts your experience. There's as I said, there's considerations around how you do this, like in a reasonable way, like adding an overview link that goes to a different level than the other links is not a great pattern either. So Yeah, I'm definitely not. I definitely don't see a reason, and I think what also has happened is modules like paragraphs have started to add accommodations to support this concept of like the fact that everybody's using admin toolbar, so there's going to be these overview links, which I think now needs to be undone. So yeah, I'm definitely not a fan of this idea. However, in this more general problem, I think this is something I've been. It's funny it's coming up because this is something I've talked about off and on for a while. Having some kind of place we can document these best practices, kind of like a design system, but you know the user interface standards on Drupal.org exist, and really do need updated. And it's one of the things I've thought is we if I had more time personally, I would put time into actually updating those and starting to document some of these decisions, because as a group, for those of us who regularly attend these meetings, I'm sure we can all appreciate that we start to see the same problems coming up over and over again, just in different contexts. You know, whether it be one form doing too many things, or you know, other issues around like the wording and how you describe elements or use description text. Like I feel like we do have the same conversations over and over again. So I feel like a way to do this would be to put us to, as a community, put effort into these user interface standards, and then be able to start to use those as a point of reference and keep those up to date based on, you know, best practice, like you would do in documenting a design system. So I think that's something I think would be time well spent. Unfortunately I just don't have the time to dedicate to doing it. And I know Ralph and I've had great discussions about this before. So that's kind of my general feeling on it. And I'll shut up and let others come in now.
Yeah, I certainly agree that would be a good thing to have, and it would also take a lot of work. Thomas, go ahead.
In many ways, Aaron kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I would have said just documentation. For me, there's the meta documentation of establishing with the community that there's always going to be dissenting points of view on any decision you make. That's kind of what happens in a community when you've got lots of people participating. But just I would document the fact that when a significant design decision has been made, you just refer back to some like original deciding post. So you say, when we've made a decision, this is how we intend to proceed, until the community comes together in a way to supersede that. A design document, as Aaron described, then is the tool you use to manage that. And until we get to some form of design document, I would suggest a tag or some way of marking significant comments or posts where decisions are made. So if we don't have time to create like kind of definitive documentation, then the secondary thing is you say, okay, I'm going to link to the decision post. And so when these re-litigations of past decisions come up, you point to that decision. You say, this is when we made that decision. It is our policy to not renegotiate this outside of these circumstances. And so, I mean, it's messy, but what I fear is in a community the size of what we have and as old as what we have, you're going to have every shade of opinion about everything. And the squeakiest wheels will show up. And that does not necessarily mean that they're right or wrong, but giving everyone a simplified path for how they're supposed to handle it, to me, would make sense as a more mature way to manage it.
Yes, I think that's all right. Simo, you were looking at an issue that was closed as outdated with a comment from Christina. And just for the sake of the recording, can you give us the issue number?
The issue number is 3402907. And this was about parent menu. The title is parent menu items with URLs are not linked to. Do we make these available? This was closed in April this year. It was opened in 2023.
Okay, I thought there was some other issue that was closed as outdated that you were looking at. But
There was also another one I was looking at.
yeah, I think this is the one.
Oh, this is closed works as designed.
Right, so this is 3445255. Cannot access top level menu items. And I don't know, just guessing from the issue titles, it looks as though all of these might be talking about the same thing. And I just wanted to look at this as an example of process. So Christina Sakrina saw this issue, and one, she closed the issue as works as designed, and that is part of what we should do in this situation. If the decision has been made and someone comes up and makes the suggestion that's already been rejected, then the appropriate thing to do is to close the issue. Works as designed. The second part is to leave a comment, as Christina has here. Be as encouraging as you possibly can. Someone took the effort to make an issue, even though it's making more work for you. You have to respect that, and be positive in your phrasing. Maybe have some standard boilerplate text that you use that's sort of upbeat. And the third thing you have to do, and this is where I think we can have more fruitful discussion, is point them to where the decision was made, which maybe she didn't do in this comment. But I would like to have further discussion of how we point people to where the decision was made. But before that, I want to acknowledge that Avani has joined us. Hi, Avani. And
Yeah, hello. Yeah.
hi. And let Aaron have his say. And after Aaron, Ralph.
Thanks, Benji. Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I think I would just also one thing I just wanted to add as well is that while I think we definitely as you said, do all those things that you said, but also if things do change over time, and if we would not be doing an effective job if we said, okay, this decision's been made, we'll never revisit, right? Because there might be new evidence that comes to light and things change over time. So what I think we should do as well, though, is if there is credible evidence is presented for why something should be done differently, it is worth evaluating that against previous decisions and seeing where changes could be made. But we must obviously, if there something like user testing or best practice or other resources have shown that there is a reason for doing something a certain way, we must be robust in that, and it should take a lot of evidence to then make that change that decision. But I don't think we should be totally closed off to ever revisiting a decision. I think that would also be equally bad practice.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Simo, if you could go back to the issue we started with. I think someone added as a related issue, usability reviews and feedback from testing. And that issue is still open. And open issues have a lot of advantage over closed issues. So in this case, when we close the issue as works as designed, we can point the person who opened the issue to this other issue and say, if you want to discuss it further, please add your comments there. And I think that's exactly the sort of thing that Aaron had in mind, right?
Yeah, and also and in a world where as well we get to the point where we have some documentation, that is where I think we would start to then point to people. But as you said, up until then, we can link people to other issues and comments. And yeah, I would also add that the number that as I said, this may keep coming up, but the number of issues opened about a problem does not necessarily mean it is a problem. Again, I think this is a perfect example of something where when we make changes, and again, other examples is of when we change the block structuring of content blocks and we move some things around. I was surprised that we did not actually get people opening issues about that in the same way that they have here, because I think this is a great example, as I said, of a pattern that people are used to and are opening issues because something has changed that they are now has disrupted their flow a little bit. But again, we must evaluate this against the the reasons for that change, and if those reasons are still hold true, then we stick by that decision, and people will very quickly get used to new patterns, and that's something we talked about with the changes to block content.
Okay, Ralph has been patient.
Thanks. In general, I'm in line with Aaron. So if issues come up after there was a decision, I think there's still some sort of truth in them and some sort of what's the term for it? Justification, basically, that something isn't clearly communicated in the decision that was made on. So I think a design decision there is a clear consensus on shouldn't be thrown away after the first challenging comment comes up or issue in regards of proposing a different path, but it should be still taken as a reason to revisit it and to question if the current implementation of the direction that was decided on is entirely correct. And in regards of that example of that top level item in the closed issue, for example, it's still, for me, it indicates and is sort of a proof that visually a link isn't clearly communicated in a expectable way, and that what goes into the success criteria I've mentioned. It is not clear that basically the top level item is actually clickable, and it's basically against that success criteria 1.4.1 in that way, and therefore on a issue to issue basis it should be basically evaluated if there is a necessity to actually iterate on the current direction. And in that regard, I think it would be reasonable.
So without getting into too many details, your point is that we should be able to, we should document somewhere why the decision was made and be able to point them at that documentation, right?
That, as well, but it should be also taken a look at the basically the suggestion or what the actual problem is for the people that are reporting. If it's just basically muscle memory for them and that they're used to basically the approach admin toolbar was using, or what is the reason that led to that newly created issue? To understand that might be helpful.
I added to the chat a link. This is something that actually Jakub Rokovic mentioned during his presentation at DrupalCon. So there was, I think it was interesting idea to have this kind of decisions.md document in the like similar to README that kind of has the kind of list and links to the decisions.
For the sake of the recording, the page you're looking at is www.jrockowitz.com/blog/schema.org-decisions. And Ralph posts a link in the chat that Lullabot has a similar sort of documentation at architecture.lullabot.com. Thomas, what did you want to say?
Just to iterate on what I was trying to say earlier, to solve the problem, for me, it's a question of visibility and findability. So when posting, so when one of these comments or issues are opened and we're referring to somewhere else, it would be helpful if there was some tool by which it could be designated as a decision. So like, it isn't clear to me that in comment 25 of 100 comment string that the final decision was made here. And so either a tag or a that you can filter upon, or like something that marks momentous decisions, even if we're just doing it in line in the stream of the issue queues, would make it more tractable to me. I find it really hard to imagine a future where we document, like, these are the right solutions, like Jacob's suggestion here, or having designed a document. These are all the perfect solution. And my concern is how long and if we can ever get to a perfect solution state on all of Drupal core. So in the meantime, until we get to that, being able to even know the difference between what is an official decision, when has that decision been made, versus what is just conversation would be very, very helpful. So not only linking back to something, but knowing that when it goes there, that what you're looking at is, hey, this is when the team that's responsible for the module made the decision, and then we can set criteria for maybe for major decisions like, and I don't know that this is a major decision, but at least for major decisions, what are the criteria that they have to provide for that validates that? Like, do they give a reason? Do they have to reference something? But some simple process that we can implement quickly, and that can be applied everywhere moving forward, rather than worrying about necessarily going back in time. And I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, and you got a thumbs up from Aaron during that, and that is sort of the discussion I would like to have, and maybe now we can think about it. So exactly as you say, decisions are made in discussions, in comments on issues, and that's terrible as a form of documentation. That especially once an issue is closed, it is less findable. So that makes it a terrible form of documentation. We have the Drupal wiki. Another option we have are Drupal change records, and I posted a link in the chat. It's www.drupal.org/list-changes/Drupal. And I'm not sure whether this is an appropriate use of a change record, but it might be. We'd have to check with, I don't know, the release managers, whether that would be an appropriate use of change records. If it's not an appropriate use of change records, we might have a similar situation. And Simo, could you open that page and just, click on one of the links there? Normally, change records are used to document technical changes, things that module owners might need to know when a change has been made in Drupal core, what they have to do to update their own modules. Just open any random change record so people have an idea what sort of information is there. Recipes can opt out of strict comparisons with existing config. There's some sort of description. A change record is generally pretty short. And my idea is that if I'm closing an issue and saying this works as designed, and I don't have any other place to document where that decision was made, maybe it was made in a discussion on some issue that's been closed. It's not all that much extra work for me to write a change record, a first draft of a change record, saying this is the decision that was made. This is the issue where that decision was discussed. That's enough for a first draft. and this is what the decision was. Then I have a change record. It is more findable than a closed issue, and I can point people to that. I'm getting a thumbs up from Thomas. And again, maybe change records are not appropriate for this. Maybe we could have a similar content type on Drupal.org for design decisions. Aaron, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm actually there's a similar and I forget exactly how the process works, but the coding standards committee have a process they go through when new decisions need to be made. So there's a coding standards project, and when a decision is needed about a particular standard, an issue will be created in there, and there's a process that goes through. Maybe something similar to that process would work for usability issues, because then you have a place where you can say, okay, this is the problem we want to make a decision about outside of the individual issue that's discussing it. And then we have a process there to agree. That's we gather evidence there, that's agreed, and then that's documented somewhere. And as I said, whether it's change record, I can't remember exactly what the coding standards one. I think it's just an announcement post that goes out on Drupal.org, like a blog post or something that says, this is what's been documented. But at the very least, like having a project, like say it was usability or something like the coding standards project, you can go in there, you can look at all the issues, you can see all of the, it's just, again, it's like this, it's just a list of all of the things that have been agreed and documented. So something like that could work, and that could actually work really well as a companion to eventual like design standards that we were talking about. As I said, whether that's in change records or the wiki or something. But I would like to eventually get to a point where we have agreed patterns of design standards. And on that note, actually, I've just posted a URL in here, which I'm hoping Simo can open. I just wanted to provide an example of what I'm thinking, because I'm aware not everybody might have seen these kind of design systems before, but the link I shared is to the Digital Scotland design system.
You shared to me. But I posted to everyone again.
There you go. Yeah, so this is just what we're looking at is under patterns, and they have a page for each pattern, and this pattern is for collecting addresses. And so you can see the first section talks about this pattern, and then when you scroll down, it shows how you would use it. It shows it lists any evidence associated with the pattern. So this is the kind of thing that I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about these kind of patterns that keep coming up, and we agree this is a established pattern. So that's the thing I think we could get to with the user interface standards, is these kind of agreed patterns. But yeah, maybe the first step is, as I said, is something like the coding standards committee do.
Okay, I thought that when the coding standards committee made a decision, it got added to the Drupal wiki, and I posted the link to the coding standards on Drupal.org.
Yeah, it probably does as well. Yeah, it's just because I'm aware, like what I'd love to get to is a point where we have a well-structured wiki. But like I said, from my perspective, I've just not had time to actually embark on that. And I think that to do it well would be a really, like, we would want to put a lot of time and resources into it, right? So something like this, definitely we should aspire to. Whether we can get there quickly or not, I don't know.
Right. So thank you, Simo. Simo opened my link to the coding standards at drupal.org/docs/develop/standards. And Simo, if you could click on the link near the top for the coding standards project. And then I noticed announcements. That section has a link to the coding standards change notices. So those are change records, not change records for Drupal core, but change records for the coding standards project on Drupal. So maybe that's Maybe we want something similar to that for usability. Thomas?
So I agree with all of that. The only thing that I wanted to comment on was when it came to decisions, it would be nice if rather than just like a design decisions or a change decisions, it would be nice to have just a decision record itself, and that would be a place that would make it searchable when decisions are made, and that could then reference something like these coding standards or design standards or design dictionary or code design, like however, whatever solution or solutions are chosen for this specific problem, having one stop shopping for decisions would be very nice, simply because that still for me is a challenge. And I don't know that people necessarily, it's a lot to parse a lot of different sources for where you have to decide a particular, like, is this decision a design decision, or is this decision a coding decision, or is this decision a standards decision? Like, I would want to make it a little bit simpler with a content type that then could point to its appropriate area. So the chain would be, if someone brings up an issue that's already been decided, you'd point to where that decision was made, however we want to point to it. And then that decision has to point to whatever long-term documentation is, if possible. But that there's two different things. One is the decision that's being made, and one is what is the actual technical solution or the consequence of that decision.
Yeah, I'm thinking that a change record is typically short and it's a low effort to create one, and then you have something to point people to. And longer term, yes, we should incorporate it into the full documentation in the wiki. And Ralph, would you like to, you've posted a few comments in the Slack. Would you like to say them yourself?
I could. Just about the latest comment by that were made right before. I think the most challenging point about the decision record is to get the already made decisions into that record. To dig out everything and document is quite the monumental effort, and in particular, finding all that might be challenging. And the other point I've made was just about that those patterns in the context of those coding standards and the link to the Scottish design system, those patterns already exist in Drupal for the user interface standards, but yeah, they are sort of outdated. And yeah, that's the point I made, updating that user interface standards and bring them up to speed. But and we've started a sort of audit and taking at the current state a look at, but that happened a few months ago, so not much movement since then.
Yeah, I would just add that the current user interface standards are a step in the right direction. I think that there's, and again, I think a lot of effort was clearly put into putting it together, and I don't want to disparage anybody who put effort into it, but I think there's maybe the structure of them or the way some of them, there's varying levels of detail and quality in it, and there's very little like citations of decisions or reasons. So, you know, having a well-structured, where I think we're going to get to with that is a well-structured set of documentation using best practice design system approaches there. So, you know, having a lot linking to evidence, and that again, that's where I think, to Thomas's point, which I totally understand where you're coming from, Thomas, and I think that's a good you know, it's a good thing that we should have. I think what I'm envisioning is that what you're describing, it is maybe like one section of a page that covers a specific topic or pattern. You know, that we would have a section on that page, say it's about, you know, to do with navigation or something, that says, okay, this is the rationale, this is the decisions that led to the rationale or something.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. I think Thomas and then Ralph.
I'll be real fast. What Aaron just spoke about, I agree with. I would add, um, I think developing a template of what we want from people when they're making a decision or when they're documenting something might help. And that way you can include like a required, like you need to link proof. Like you can't just make a decision. There has to be like, what is the canonical source of that decision, which may just be a comment in a closed issue. But we need to require enough for it to be deemed a decision or deemed an official thing. Otherwise, it's just one of many opinions. And the other thing was, I don't advocate for going through everything and processing all of the decisions that were already made. Rather, when an issue like this particular one that Christina was responding to comes up, then we go through and take an old decision and move that over, and then that's what you link to. And so it's more work, but it's less work than having to find all the decisions that have been made. And moving forward, we encourage people when they make these types of significant decisions, we document those. So it's about changing how we move forward with a definable, lightweight process, and then using that same process on an ad hoc, as needed basis to respond. Thank you.
Okay, and Ralph?
Yeah, +1 to what Thomas said. And just one idea in regards of those patterns and the presentation of the user interface standards, maybe something in addition to those coding standard or the documentation, or maybe even that documentation could be done in that as well, might be to consider the UI suite module, that suite of modules. And if basically the admin UI would have a design system, that way things could be documented and might be even a good way to test the UI suite under real life conditions.
I'm sorry, I don't quite see the point you're making. So,
I mean that basically that way you have with that UI suite, you have several modules, the UI patterns, UI styles, UI skins, and UI examples. And with those examples and components, you're able to see in the user interface standards also have those patterns basically, where they explain the different patterns, for example, a button or a select field and so forth. And you have additional information about how the microcopy should look like and how they function and behave and so forth. And with that modules, maybe the interlinking might be easier. Just as an idea.
okay. So we're down to just a couple of minutes left. What are our next steps? I think I'll probably reach out on Slack, maybe to Christina and others, and suggest that we start using some sort of change records for this as just so we have something to point people to when we close their issues as works as designed. I'm getting a thumbs up from Thomas. Are there other steps we want to do? I know we'd love to overhaul the documentation, but that's not a small step. Go ahead.
I think it would be nice to put together at least a suggested template for when big decisions are made. Like, this is what we recommend you guys put together. And we could have a shared document in Slack that we all kind of look at and tweak. And we can agree that we don't want it to be more than like 1 page worth of stuff, maybe less if possible, but something very simple so that what we're recommending people do, they have an idea of what it is we're trying to ask them to do.
Okay, get a thumbs up from Ralph for that. And are we thinking of specifically having something for usability decisions, design decisions, the admin UI, or are we thinking of doing this for all of Drupal core?
I would do all of Drupal core and just simply have on that template pick one of these categories, so you could so that we'd say, okay, this is a design decision, but the template would be applicable to basically any major decision that people wanted to use, and it can be recommended rather than required at first.
Okay. Okay, and we are at the top of the hour. So thank you all for participating. And if we can sort of make the process of closing an issue as works as designed, if we can make that process a little less painful, then I think we'll really be helping the Drupal project. So thanks for this discussion.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Benji.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Nice weekend.
See you next week.